The other day, I did a huge deep dive into every little Brewmaster change, what was added, what was removed, what was reworked, the hero talents, apex talents, etc. I just like nerded out. I spent a lot of time in that video going over everything. I'm trying to do something similar for all of the tanks to get everyone caught up before beta testing, but admittedly, I'm not an expert on most of these tanks. I don't play it as much as I do Brewmaster, so my goal for this video is to try to talk about all of the major changes that are impacting the way the class plays, like any kind of quality of life changes along with major talent shifts or playstyle shifts. Of course, we're gonna talk about hero talents, both the new Annihilator as well as the kind of reworked, not even reworked, just like Aldrachi. We'll talk about most of the removed and changed talents in the tree, and the Apex talents, because this class is just phenomenal. At this point, probably by the time this video releases, I've already done it, obviously the Brewmaster video along with BDK. Similar sentiments about BDK that I have here. If I miss anything, please let me know. I'm not an expert, but going forward in future videos, if there's anything that I should be aware of that I didn't cover here, let me know down below. When I do beta videos and beta coverage, I will try to include those things in the future. Or if there's anything specific you want me to test. At the end of the video, I'm also going to give my kind of general feedback, subjectively of course, how I feel the class is playing and how I feel about the direction of the tank. Spoiler, it's insanely good. This spec is probably the best tank coming out of alpha. Sorry, spoilers. Let's get into it. So looking at the talent tree, and again, just random little side note, I'm going to be sprinkling in footage of me playing some normal dungeons here and there, maybe on specific talking points, but this is really just going to be a nerd out video. So I would classify any of the major, and maybe not even major losses, but like the larger losses that we're seeing. Some of them are involved in the class tree and some of the spec tree. So we lost access to the hunt and damage powers like Collective Anguish. The class tree has been shifted in a direction where it's more utility or survivability based, and any power that Blizzard specifically felt like we should keep as VDHs was baked into our spec tree. So like I said, the hunt was removed, no longer available for the VDH, and Collective Anguish, even though Collective Anguish I don't believe has been played in a very long time. They also removed Sigil of Spite from the class tree, but it was put into the spec tree, so it's still there, and it's actually going to be the catalyst for Art of the Glaive. So it is all working, and I will talk about that when we get to kind of the hero talent specifically. One other major change that you're going to notice if you end up testing beta, or if you're watching anyone partake in beta or even alpha testing over the last couple of weeks, is the major shift that they're making for VDH isn't necessarily any kind of pruning, but it's a simplification and making their defensive level more static. So beforehand, especially on live servers currently, you're going to notice like frailty stacks is like a really big one, right? The amount of frailty stacks and painbringer stacks you're able to accumulate and hold within a pull and managing your soul fragments, that is a very minor but also major skill curve of the class. And what they're doing is they're homogenizing it. And so things like frailty and almost all of the nodes that are down here are going to just give you static damage reductions regardless of your soul frag generation. Now, I personally think this is a really, really good thing. Some people like the kind of complexity of this class. Now, personally, I think having more accessibility for specifically any player who wants to play VDH, I think it's better for the average player. But I also think Blizzard is adding other ways to have a more complex damage or mitigation palette, which I'll get to in shortly. So they've also changed, and this is slightly controversial. Sigil of Misery exists, but it now gets replaced if you spec into Sigil of Chains. So if you end up putting a point here, it's going to replace Misery, so VDHs have a little less control than they normally would. Now, don't get me wrong, Sigil of Misery was generally a rough CD to work with. Not all DHs used it properly, and even when you did this, the length of the CC was a little different. Now, there were times where it was really good for like specific skips in a dungeon, where you're able to basically fear an entire pack, pull it, let your group run by, and then you can like shadow meld. That stuff was really cool. So if you tried to take Sigil of Chains, it's removed. Most players, at least competitive players, will probably see this as a downside that they now compete with each other. I'm a little indifferent. I think choosing between having the ability to mass script versus having those like pseudo, very nuanced skips, I think is the decision you have to make as a player. And I think that actually adds a level of intrigue to decision making. But I do understand that it is a loss of total CC that you have access to, and as a tank player, we like having access to having control. Simple as that. And then they obviously removed some talents like bulk extraction, for example, was removed, even though I don't think we ever played bulk extraction, but that has been removed as well. So there's been a couple of other talents that have been removed, but I'm not going to really get into it. A lot of the demon spike nodes have been also simplified. Calcified spikes is like a flat 5% amount. You also have feed the demon, which has been somewhat simplified. But outside of that, that's what we lost, I guess. So let's talk about what we gained. Now, we gained a lot. A good bit of it's going to be in the class tree. For example, Burn It Out and Soul Cleanse now allow DHs to remove curse effects or disease effects from themselves whenever they cast Immo Aura, which again has a very short cooldown. So you're able to constantly remove disease effects. Now this is not only going to be really good if we continue going down with the Xal'atath affixes. Now there is a high chance, I shouldn't say high chance, but there is a chance that the Xal'atath affixes get reworked. But having a disease dispel or a dispel that's like personalized could help with that. Beyond that, there's a lot of diseases and a fair bit of curses in some of these dungeons that I have tested so far. And that's not to mention the additional dungeons that are being reintroduced for the Mythic Plus season. Having access to this is probably pretty good, even though I wish the disease effect was maybe poison would be nice, but that's okay. They've added a lot more movement speed nodes. Obviously, we still have access to things like Pursuit, but they also have like Fellfire Haste and Fellbound that all exist still, giving us more movement speed after Infernal Striking. Now, are you going to play these? Probably not. The biggest thing, though, is this Wings of Wrath. It increases our glide speed by 40%, making our glide competitive with mount speed. So mounting up is like a thing of the past, especially in Mythic Plus. It's just, generally speaking, a good utility node. And again, that's mostly what they've done in this tree. A lot of this stuff is just straight up Infernal Strike reduction, small little gains here and there when it comes to like tertiary stats or, secondary stats, increased movement speed, stuns. The class tree, I think, is in a much better spot and has a lot less power offensively, which I think is good because at most class trees out of all tanks and all specs, generally it's a little bit more defensive and utility based, and DH having like a more archaic offensive class tree created a very homogenized or I guess strict talent selection. Anyways, one of my favorite things that they have added is Infernal Strike interaction. So I think over the last couple of years, Infernal Strike, at least maybe since Legion, I feel like Infernal Strike has simply been either a tool for kiting or a tool for engaging. Maybe engaging isn't even the right word, because I don't know how many times you'd actually like Infernal Strike into a pack unless you wanted to get one shot. But what they've done is they've added a few interesting talents. So first off, we have First In, Last Out. Infernal Strike grants you a rapidly decaying shield equal to 6% of your max health. So Infernal Strike is now a very small damage absorption, and this exists anytime you cast Infernal Strike. Beyond that, things like Fellfire Fist will now plant a Sigil of Flame at your target location. Now, that's great, but what's also great about this is that it shatters a soul fragment, which fits really nicely into obviously DH playstyle. You want to consume fragments to heal and do damage, but it also adds more soul fragment gen and consumption for Art of the Glaive, and you want to be obviously consuming when you're playing Annihilator. And it also has the thing Doomslayer, which I guess I can swap to right now. Beyond the Sigil of Flame plant that happens when you Infernal Strike shortly after entering combat, you're also going to summon Voidfall Meteors. So we're going to open with Sigil, then we're going to jump in, we're going to plant another Sigil, and these meteors are going to come down, hitting for quite a lot. Voidfall Meteors hitting for 14k, 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 29k crits. World Killer is the final hit of the meteor, which is hitting for 20ks and 40ks. So you now have a ton of on-demand burst through Infernal Strike, which I think is just so sick. There's some other really cool interactions that I'll talk about shortly with the hero talents, but I want to talk about the rest of the gained talents here. So a small change, and maybe not even a small change, a big change, is Soul Cleave is now uncapped. It now just does reduced damage beyond 6 targets. Spirit Bomb is also now essentially a baseline cooldown that with Annihilator, you're going to be using in specific moments to consume your Voidfall meteors quickly. And when you're playing Aldrachi Reaver, it's a way for you to quickly consume soul frags if you're over cap or you're in a really large pool. What I found is that with Aldrachi, at least with current tuning, it makes a little bit more sense to still just kind of stick to Soul Cleave and only hit Spirit Bomb if you need to consume or you have enough targets to actually slam the Spirit Bomb button. But generally speaking, the Soul Cleave is going to benefit you a little bit more due to Thrill of the Hunt and the just Aldrachi Reaver procs. Kind of a small thing that they did is they changed Revel in Pain to now just give all of your fire damage. It now shields you 2% of all the fire damage you deal up to a certain amount. And then when Fiery Brand is active, it's doubled. Don't know if this is going to be good or not. There might be a world where we play some weird Fiery Brand bullshit build, but that is changed. I just wanted to mention it. And I think the last two things, I guess, well, obviously they added Vengeful Beast. So this increases the duration of meta and increases the damage of Fracture, Soul Cleave, and Spirit Bomb by 20%. So it's just like a nice little damage amp node. And they, of course, added the new Annihilator hero talent. This is the only class in the game that is getting a new hero talent because obviously DHs are getting a new spec, which required a new hero talent, which then VDHs are sharing with Devourer. So let's talk about the Apex talent first, because I think this has kind of an interesting interaction with the class. So how this works is the first point you spend is going to access Untethered Rage. Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb have a chance per soul fragment consumed to grant Untethered Rage, allowing Metamorphosis to be cast without incurring its cooldown and lasting 10 seconds. So what it's essentially doing is it's giving you a chance to just use meta. This can obviously be good in a lot of different scenarios. The free proc could be a little RNG. You can get it back to back, but what is nice about this is that when it does proc, let's say you didn't use meta yet, or meta just became available, but then you get a proc of Untethered Rage. If you then use the Untethered Rage proc and you use your meta, it doesn't put the main meta on cooldown. It doesn't obviously incur its cooldown. So it's kind of nice. It just gives you like a mini meta that you can use. Chances are you're just going to hit it right away outside of maybe very, very niche scenarios, like a pull is about to be finished. But generally speaking, you're just going to slam it, and that's going to have a nice little feedback loop with both hero talents, which I'll get to in a bit, because when you're in meta, you're going to be dealing more damage, you're going to have more armor, so you're tankier, but you're also generating more fragments per fracture, which both cycles back into healing, damage, and things like Art of the Glaive, for example. So as we move down, kind of the chain node going into the capstone, it's a 2-point node, which causes Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb. They can now consume 1 additional soul fragment, and they deal 10% more damage for each consumed. So that puts Spirit Bomb, and I mean, it makes just your spenders a lot beefier of just abilities. They just do more damage every time as long as you're consuming fragments with them. Spirit Bomb requires fragments to use. Soul Cleave only requires Fury, but will now consume up to 3 fragments. Being able to consume more fragments means that you have a higher chance to proc your Untethered Rage. That's good. That's awesome. Last but not least, each cast of Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb that does not grant you the Untethered Rage buff, granting meta, instead applies a stack of Seething Anger. And Seething Anger grants you 1% agility and increases your chance to gain Untethered Rage, and it's going to last for 12 seconds and cannot be refreshed once you gain meta. Through my experience, this is generally going to ramp up to about 10 to 12 stacks, so you're going to have 10 to 12% agility going into meta. So now your meta windows are even stronger. But even when you aren't in meta, you're at least getting rewarded for consuming. So it's just you're always kind of like building this power. And I think this is just so sick. Now, getting into the hero talents, the Apex talents has really good synergy with both Annihilator and with your Aldrachi Reaver. And so taking a look at Annihilator, let's explore the Annihilator tree. So the Annihilator tree is obviously brand new. And so all of these talents are new. And so the way that Annihilator works is that the main ability is Voidfall. Fracture has a 35% chance to grant you 1 stack of Voidfall. So it's just a stacking buff. Once you reach 3 stacks of Voidfall, your Soul Cleave consumes 1 of those 3 stacks to reach into the void and call down a Meteor Strike at your targeted location, dealing 10,000 Shadow Flame damage to all enemies within 10 yards, damage reduced beyond 8 targets. So it's just a big AoE. So basically, You try to fracture often. You fish for Voidfall stacks. Once you hit 3 stacks, you spam cleave to then consume those stacks quickly. A couple of the nodes in the tree are pretty lackluster. For example, each stack of Voidfall gives you a little bit of haste. Each stack of Voidfall gives you reduced damage. That's fine. You have like a choice node between each stack of Voidfall giving you 3% movement speed or having an additional taunt. I think the movement speed is going to end up being better. I don't think you ever really need an additional charge of Torment, but if you want one, it's there. Then there's Final Hour. So the passive bonuses you gain by the stacks of Voidfall actually persist after they get consumed. So it'll give you more uptime on the 6% haste, on the 9% movement speed, on the 6% DR. This is all good stuff. Now, when you get into like the Voidfall Meteor Strike nodes, that's when shit gets really, really interesting. So really quick, Feldev for Meteoric Rise. Feldev now increases its damage by 15%, and when you channel its full duration, you're going to generate 3 soul fragments, which is just good. It's more soul frag gen. Enemies struck by Voidfall Meteor now take an additional 25% additional damage over time, so there's a dot component now to the Voidfall Meteors. Fracture is going to generate additional fury and do more damage. Spirit Bomb and Voidfall Meteors deal 30% increased damage when striking a single target, so this is just going to allow you to have like more of single target, you know, profile when you're on boss fights or in raid, allowing you maybe to play Annihilator compared to Aldrachi. Now, these kind of center 4 nodes, along with the capstone, I think are my favorite. So you're going to gain 3 stacks of Voidfall and reset the cooldown of Spirit Bomb when you activate Metamorphosis. So instead of requiring you to spend or it's like hit Fracture to get those stacks, you can now just pop Meta, and now you have 3 stacks, and then you would just hit Spirit Bomb immediately to call down the meteor. So meta now is extremely, extremely bursty, which is really good. Here's that free proc up on Tethered Rage. When I hit this, it's also going to give me the Voidfall stacks again, and it's going to reset my Spirit Bomb despite me already being in meta, which means I get to call down more meteors. So there's like this nice little synergy with when your Apex talent procs, you're just going to benefit even more from the hero talent, which is just fucking Gucci. While at 3 stacks of Voidfall, Spirit Bomb consumes all 3 to rapidly call down all the meteor strikes. So when I originally talked about Voidfall, it mentions just Soul Cleave. This allows smart, or at least tuned in players to optimize their building and spending of these stacks. So the issue it's not even an issue, but if you're just Soul Cleaving, the damage is going to be spread out a little bit more. But you also can't gain Voidfall stacks when you're in the middle of consuming them. So if I try to get up to 3 here, maybe if I get lucky, it'll proc now. Oh, nope, maybe not. Now if I hit Soul Cleave, it's going to consume only 1 of those stacks. And then I have to hit Soul Cleave again. There's the 2nd stack. And then finally, here's the 3rd one. But now I cast Fracture 3 times, which meant that any of those 3 could have given me a stack of Voidfall. And so it's kind of important that when you do get to those 3 stacks, that you Spirit Bomb always. So now it's at this point where you're kind of always holding your Spirit Bomb for those Voidfall stacks, or utilizing meta to reset the cooldown of Spirit Bomb. All really sick interactions. Next, we have Doomsayer. I've already kind of mentioned this, I think, but you're going to call down meteors whenever you Infernal Strike, similar to Fellfire Fist, once you enter combat for the first time. So this is going to incentivize combat drops, which I think is kind of a cool interaction. Obviously, in Mythic Plus, there's a world where you don't really want to drop combat, but you might want to. And now, because you're going to want to access Doomsayer. There's another reason why you might want to access that as well, which I'll point out here shortly. So Dark Matter, your first Spirit Bomb after entering Demon form causes a Shadow Flame Meteor to shower to assault the area, dealing damage over 6 seconds. So yeah, you want a Spirit Bomb basically always whenever you enter meta. And then last, the 3rd Voidfall Meteor Strike called down in a sequence is larger, has a 50% increased area, deals 100% more damage, and reduces the cooldown of meta by 10 seconds. So this is where things get really interesting, because if I go into combat here, and let's say I Sigil, I Infernal Strike, I then pop meta and then Spirit Bomb, it's going to call on all those meteors, giving me cooldown reduction already. Every time those meteors kind of get rained down, I'm going to get another meta proc, so I'm going to Fracture, meta, Spirit Bomb, and now the cooldown is going to be reduced after that next hit, so now I'm down to 125. So we're already down 20 seconds on the CD, which is really good. So we're going to end up being able to get this down to a pretty short cooldown at the end of the day while in combat, as long as we're just doing our rotation. So Annihilator kind of has more uptime on meta inherently because of the cooldown reduction that we're going to be getting. Now, what's really interesting about this thing specifically, though, this Doomsayer, is that it calls down 3 Voidfall Meteors, the same amount you would get from Voidfall. Now, this could be a bug, but I've dropped combat. I have 50 seconds left on my CD. If I throw down a sigil and then I jump in and watch these meteors fall, I'm going to get more cooldown reduction whenever I drop from pack to pack. And so you're going to end up being able to get meta down to like a 110 CD. It's now already down to almost 10 seconds. I could even get it if I Spirited Bomb here, I would have been able to actually get it off CD quicker, but nonetheless, you're going to get a ton of cooldown reduction. So what's interesting is it incentivizes you to drop, but it's rewarding you for dropping combat because you're going to have cooldown reduction on Metamorphosis every time you're able to do that. Plus, Doomsayer just does so much fucking damage at the start of a pull. I love this hero talent so much. This is the reason I'm excited for VDH going into the next expansion. But I can't lie, Aldrachi Reaver is also super fun. So Aldrachi Reaver is going to play the same. If you're a VDH enjoyer, you probably are because you're watching this video and you've somehow made it this far in, despite me losing my voice. Aldrachi Reaver is literally the same thing, besides the fact that because the hunt no longer exists, it's now going to be procced from Sigil of Spite. Now there's a benefit to this. The hunt was a minute 30 CD. And besides the Season 2 tier set from The War Within that gave you like the chance to get meta resets or CD reduction, I believe, on the hunt. Was it resets? I don't remember. Either way, it was a minute and a half. Sigil of Spite is baseline 1 minute, but when you play with Cycle of Binding, it's 51 seconds. So you're going to be gaining your Art of the Glaive much more often from Sigil of Spite because of this. The 3 new added hero talent nodes in this tree are a little bit spread out, not really. So first you have Broken Spirit, which causes Sigil of Spite to shatter 1 additional fragment, and it causes Soul Cleave to have a chance to shatter it. So you're getting a return on your spender, and you're getting just 1 extra charge or 1 extra soul fragment from using Sigil of Spite. So I believe it's going to be 4 instead of 3. Which just puts you one soul frag closer to getting Art of the Glaive on a shorter cooldown. Next, we have Keen Edge, and this is just Reaver Glaive's damage is increased by 20%, and other physical only damage is increased by 10%. So a small damage gain for your physical abilities, which Aldrachi Reaver has a fair bit of, since you're going to be doing Fracture often. Soul Cleave is physical, I'm pretty sure. And then also the Reaver's Mark or Thrill of the Fight. What's it called? Hold on. Whatever the, Fury of the Aldrachi. There we go. The Fury of Aldrachi slashes, I believe, are also physical. So that's where the physical damage increase is going to be coming from, which is good. The last thing that was added is Bladecraft, which causes basically your additional cleaves or your Reaver's Mark will stack up additional times based on which order you cast after using your Reaver's Glaive, your Art of the Glaive. So if you cast Fracture into Soul Cleave, your Soul Cleave is going to just do really big AoE damage. If you go Soul Cleave into Fracture, it's going to stack up to 3 total times instead of 2, or instead of 1 even, giving you 21% more damage instead of 14 or 7. Outside of that, you're like Aldrachi feels kind of like the same. You're going to open, I don't know what I'm not going to pretend to know what you're going to open with, but generally you can still open with Sigil. You'll Demon Spikes, you can Infernal Strike in for your free Sigil plus the first in last out. And then essentially, you know, you'll start just spending and consuming your fragments as fast as you possibly can. But as you can see, you're going to actually end up generating like a lot of fragments. So here we go again, and then we'll Fracture into Soul Cleave, and we'll get a bunch of slashes going out there. So a ton of damage that's going to be coming out quite often. And you're going to notice that fairly consistently, I'm going to actually be sitting at capped soul fragments on the ground. The one thing that I did notice about Demon Hunter currently is that soul frag generation is kind of like through the fucking roof. Right there, I had 9 outs. Now, luckily, DHs have this thing where they automatically consume fragments after a second or two if you go over the cap. So you're not wasting fragments. It just means you're going to be sitting on cap for a second, which is totally fine. So right here, I'm going to actually go to 8. But as you're going to see, when I do go over cap, 2 are always going to return to me, which does count towards my total amount that I am consuming. So right here, I just gained Art of the Glaive or Reaver's Glaive just by spamming Fracture. Obviously, you want to consume all the fragments you do send out. It also empowers your spells. But besides that, Yeah, you're kind of just sitting here doing what you normally do. Now this build is a little less meta reliant, but if you are playing Untethered Rage, you're still getting a ton of procs of meta, and being in meta is going to generally be good. You're just getting more Soul Fragment and Fury generation along with like you're gonna be tankier. So when meta does proc when you are, you know, in a dungeon, you're just gonna hit it on cooldown. You're just getting less cooldown reduction because you aren't getting it from the Voidfall Meteors. But besides that, if you enjoyed Aldrachi Reaver in War Within, you're probably going to love it even more going into this next expansion. Or at least the beta testing, until they inevitably ruin it like Blizzard sometimes does. So we'll see. So overall, I think VDH is in such a good spot. Now, this is kind of a spoiler, because I do plan on doing like a tier list video, but VDH is probably my favorite tank on Alpha. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Brewmaster main at heart. I love Brewmaster. I'm going to continue probably playing it and maining it going into Midnights. But when it comes to like pure excitement, the changes that Blizzard is making actively to the class, for better or for worse, mostly for better, as well as the direction with hero talents and apex talents, I think VDH is in such a good spot. It has the control it needs, despite it being a little nerfed. It's extremely tanky and durable. It has like a fun gameplay loop, regardless of the hero talent you're playing, and the apex talent has good synergy with both hero talent trees, along with just talent trees in your spec tree. I had a lot of fun testing it this final week of alpha, running through some of the dungeons, messing around with the different hero talents. This is just the most fun tank I've played so far in alpha when it comes to gameplay loop. It's good. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this somewhat of a breakdown. If I missed anything that is fairly major, like I said at the start of the video, please let me know. I will probably cover more stuff going into beta when I have more time to test and we can actually start testing harder content like Mythic Plus and raid testing. Anyways, I appreciate all of you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.